Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX and I'm Megha Sharma. Pakistan has witnessed yet another terror strike in the Restive Balochistan province. At least 20 miners have been killed and there are 7 others who have been reportedly injured after unidentified gunmen attacked a coal mine in Duki district east of Quetta. This attack comes just days after the killing of 3 people, which included 2 Chinese nationals, in a suicide bomb attack near the Karachi airport. The attackers reportedly targeted the Junaid coal company mines. Witnesses claim that the attackers fired rockets, lobbed grenades at the mines and damaged the machinery before fleeing the site. Locals have begun a sit-in protest against the deaths. Meanwhile, an investigation has also been launched to identify and apprehend the perpetrators. This comes ahead of the SCO Summit, which is being hosted by Islamabad. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar and the Chinese President Xi Jinping will be in attendance. With the recent attacks and the killing of the 2 Chinese nationals and now yet another attack in Balochistan, will this be impacting the safety and security of the delegates who will be arriving in Pakistan for the SCO Summit? And how is Pakistan going to end this reign of terror that is biting it in its own home ground? Joining me on the telecast is Ambassador Suresh Goyal. Ambassador Goyal, unfortunately, there has been yet another terror attack that has taken place in Balochistan. This is not the first time an attack such as this, of such magnitude and even bigger, has taken place in Balochistan, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa and other parts of Pakistan. But the important question is, can these attacks be related to the SCO Summit that is taking place?
Megha, there is clearly no doubt that the intensity and the frequency of the attacks, I refuse to call them terrorist attacks, you may call them whatever you want. These are attacks as claimed by the Balochistan Liberation Army. And as I maintained, there are organizations who have different objectives. They have an objective and they're using all kinds of tactics. They're using extremist methods in their approach. But frequency of these attacks is different, and the intensity would definitely increase as the SCO Summit comes closer, because it serves the political objective of creating that kind of apprehension, fear and concern in the minds of both the Pakistan government and those who are coming to attend. So there will be clearly an impact on the conference, and also my suspicion is that this is likely to increase and happen more often as more such events take place in Pakistan. Megha.
Okay. Let's also hear the point of view of Amjad Ayub Mirza. He is a Pakistan-occupied Kashmir activist. Amjad Ayub Mirza, you have spoken at length about this subject, about the liberation, freedom movement of the Balochis. There has been a terror attack. There are 22 people who have died in a situation such as this. Do we see there is going to be the frequency of such attacks that is only going to intensify in the coming years, and what is going to be the end result of it?
Well, I think that these incidents are not going to end anytime sooner. Pakistan army is calling it military operation. I call it civil war. This is basically a civil war going on between the Baloch people and the state of Pakistan, and similarly in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well. And Pakistan, every nook and corner of Pakistan is now protesting against the Pakistani state. Today, 11th of October, in POJK city Bagh, thousands of people are protesting against Pakistan, and they are calling it awareness event, but it is against the atrocities of Pakistan. So it's not only Balochistan. If you look at left, right and center, everywhere Pakistan has entangled itself in its own contradictions and in constant mode of denial is one of the reasons that they cannot even address the issue, even begin to address the issue. But these incidents are going to intensify. I don't see any reconciliation between the government of Pakistan and those who are fighting against this government.
Okay. Professor Madan Alapat, let's try to understand the sentiment behind the people who are fighting this war in a bid to gain their independence. I mean, there is a narrative that goes about talking about the liberation movement, like I said, in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa. We take a look at Balochistan, other parts of Pakistan. But at this point of time, when we see an SCO summit that is taking place and it's happening in just a few days' time, do you think Pakistan becomes a place that can be seen as a safe country to hold such international summits?
Well, the short answer, the obvious answer is no, Megha. And I'd like to point out that whether it is Baloch or Pashtun or Sindhis, there's a very active expatriate community of Baloch, Pashtun, Sindhis, and these communities are very unhappy because the Pakistan state has been deploying the ISI to harass some of the activists who are demanding greater rights, and frankly some of them also demanding freedom. So this is what is happening. At the same time, when you're talking about the SCO summit, the reality is that a summit like this will draw international media attention, especially because Prime Minister Modi and President Xi are coming for that. And that being the case, it's quite obvious that that there will be an effort by groups that are interested in more rights for the Pashtun, Baloch, Sindhi, and of course the occupied Kashmir, the people who are being suffering for so long in occupied Kashmir. There will definitely be a focus on attacks during this period because of the media attention, and secondly because the police forces will be occupied significantly in providing security to the many world leaders who are coming for a summit. Now, the case of India, of course, in the case of India, frankly, Prime Minister, Xi Jinping will be there, Putin will be there. There's no question about it. And that will ensure media attention because now China and Russia, as a consequence of the Ukraine war, are joined together against the Western countries in what I call Cold War 2.0. So there is a logic of these groups in staging more attacks during a period when an international summit is taking place. And again, I come back to your question and the short answer. Pakistan is clearly not a place where any international or inter-regional summit should take place. There's no question about it. It was a mistake to hold the SCO in Pakistan. I am sure China would have insisted that Pakistan be chosen. And very frankly, today what you're seeing in Balochistan, the latest incident in which some 20 people have been killed by groups operating there, it just indicates how unsafe the entire country has been as a consequence of the fact that the army has a stranglehold on Pakistan and a particular region of a particular province has a stranglehold on the army.
Yeah.
All the other provinces are neglected, and frankly, there's a strong upwelling of the feeling that we must be more free, we must have more rights, and many of them feel we must have independence. And that is coming up throughout Pakistan, as Mr. Mirza correctly said, and I don't believe it is going to stop at all. It's going to continue, Megha.
Particularly then, do you think there is, any lack of protests that have been raised by the SCO summit meetings, the Shanghai Cooperation Organization and the member states, and why is that so?
And I'm not sure about your question, but cut the long story short, it is like this. Pakistan being one of the SCO members, today or tomorrow a meeting on a rotational basis would have happened there. Number two, for any group which has been into armed violence for legitimate reasons included, they would always try to strike at a time when there is more international focus in that particular region. And because of the SCO summit, invariably there will be a certain amount of focus in Pakistan right now. But that doesn't mean that Baloch-based organizations who are involved in this are doing it only for that purpose. Because people of Balochistan have never considered themselves part of the sovereign country called Pakistan, if at all it's sovereign. Secondly, they are only asking for a legitimate share of the business that accrues from the resources which are based in Balochistan. They have never got it. So the problem that they face is the same as it is with the rest of the Pakistan, is that all the benefits accrue to the Punjab portion of Pakistan. And I don't think the attacks are going to stop just after the SCO summit is over. I think the intensity of these attacks is only going to rise. Yes, China would be invariably, suffering out of it because the CPC corridor runs to Balochistan. The issue is this: for a long time, Pakistan could control it, contain it, because they had the sin money that they used to get from the West for all the nuisance that they used to do. But that sin money has considerably been cut down over the last few years. Because the utility of Pakistan to a certain extent have gone down in terms of its proportion to other countries. So that is a problem. And unfortunately, it's not a new issue what is happening in Balochistan. For a long period of time, Pakistan actually used even armored helicopters, tanks against people of Balochistan. The world remained mute and ignored the whole issue because Pakistan has its utility, as I said. Even today in the West, they don't give too much of traction to what's happening over there because they don't think it is important for them. But this issue is one of the many issues which is actually helping in imploding Pakistan. Now, let us also understand this. Pakistan as a country is not going to implode. It might be imploding from inside, but it's not going to disintegrate so soon. The threats that are there that India faces from Pakistan remains more or less the same, because Balochis are also fighting against the same Punjab, Pakistan, which has been the genesis of all terror attacks that happens here. So that is not going to come down. There are challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. Ambassador Goyal, I'll come back to you and talking about how there have been a number of Chinese infrastructure projects and Chinese nationals who have been targeted in a number of these attacks. And the most recent one where the 2 Chinese nationals lost their lives in that suicide attack in Karachi. Do you think China at this point of time is helping Pakistan not just financially but militarily as well to quell these resistant movements or these terrorist activities, whichever way you want to look at it, in these parts? Because it's very important for China for the CPEC project to be completed and then start functioning.
Megha, it's a very valid question that you have put to the panel here, and let me basically go to answer it in a slightly different manner. Number one, it is quite clear that SCO as an organization was initiative or was actually kind of moved by China as an organization to bring together the Central Asian republics and China and increase its own influence in the region. And therefore, China has a very specific interest invested in successful holding of the SCO meeting. Please also remember that when India wanted to join the SCO, it is China which insisted that Pakistan should become member of SCO at the same time. Clearly, China has, it's not just a friendship between China and Pakistan, but China has a lot invested, politically invested in successful conclusion of the meeting in Pakistan. Considering that, it is to be taken for granted that China will do everything possible to see that the SCO meeting is not disrupted because of these kind of attacks. Now, what it does not do, it's entirely a matter for China to decide. But one thing is again very clear, that in the process, the Pakistani army will have a greater role, not just security, but the entire organization of the meeting. That is point number 2. Point number 3. Is it possible that given the kind of security situation, and I would say rapidly worsening security situation because of the Balochistan Liberation Army and the differences, is it possible that Pakistan might decide not to hold the Congress or the meeting? No. It has become a matter of prestige for Pakistan and China not to stop it. So the conflict will go on. Next question: should India go to the summit, even though decision has been taken that the EA will take part in the meeting? But if the security situation continues to worsen, should India go? I don't think India will reverse the stand now, unless the security situation is really so bad that the entire venue security is undetermined, uncertain. So India will go, because otherwise it will be basically giving a free cheat to China-sided parties.
Yeah.
Last thing, and this is the last point really here. If this leads to a certain more significant action by the Pakistani army at this stage, is it a possibility or not a possibility? I think Dr. Mirza will be better able to answer this question. But my own assessment is that both the Pakistani government and the Pakistani army will desist from taking any precipitate action at this time, because this will make international position of Pakistan even more difficult.
Okay.
And that's where I will stop now.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Mr. Mirza, do you see a role that India can play in terms of the splinter groups that have been gaining much impetus in the last few years? And if at all India were to play a role here, what kind of a role would these tribes, these communities seek from it?
I think it's not a question of whether India can or cannot. The question is whether India should or should not. And I think India's policy so far has been of non-interference in, neighboring countries' internal turmoil. Otherwise, India would have definitely interfered in Bangladesh, which has brought in more harm for India diplomatically as well as territorially. So I don't think India has that policy, and I don't think India should get involved in Pakistan's internal these conflicts. Having said that, I think India has a moral obligation of highlighting these atrocities on international forums and highlighting them and facilitating people who are human rights activists but living in diaspora to present their voice in front of a global audience. That I think India should focus on, not arming and instigating violence, in any sense. Bangladesh, India had to take a stand there and send in its forces. That was a totally different scenario. And this Balochistan and Khyber Pakhtunkhwa violence is a different scenario. Even in the context of Jammu and Kashmir, I don't think that India should use its armed forces to liberate Pakistani occupied Jammu Kashmir. It should be, sorted out diplomatically, and other means should be applied. Yeah.
Okay. Professor Nalapat, now in a neighborhood that is so volatile and unstable, how does India ensure that its borders are secure and safe?
I'd like to say very clearly that it's important for India to ensure that it's a stable neighborhood. But you can't get that stable neighborhood when you have a country like Pakistan, whose army is controlling it and whose army is committed to the breakup of India, and now it has been joined by a much larger country. And we know, that these two countries are working very closely together. So I doubt very much that diplomacy will be the answer. But I agree with Mr. Mirza. I'm sure India is not in any way active in promoting violence anywhere in the world, and certainly not in neighboring Pakistan, despite all that Pakistan has been doing and is doing to India. But having said that, I'd like to point out, it's no accident that miners were targeted, that the CPEC has been targeted. CPEC and mining are two, are two examples of the way China is draining the resources of Balochistan for its own benefit. And the military is a willing facilitator of that in exchange for a certain amount of largesse. The resources of Balochistan are being drained and the Baloch people are getting hardly any share of it. The
Yes.
Pashtun people also are suffering very actively and they're not getting any share of anything that is being, done in collaboration with China. So I think mining is a perfect example of the fact that Balochistan is rich in minerals and the country that is extracting minerals right, left and center for its own use, by the way, and frankly at much less than a fair price. And secondly, where the share of the Baloch people is almost nil. So it's no accident that miners have been targeted because these people will obviously be doing so, mining, to
Yeah.
take away the resource of Balochistan, against the interests of the Baloch people, Megha.
Yes, absolutely. Then Pathakrit, what more can India do besides raising protests over the building of the CPEC project that we have been raising the voice against in the past several years, since the inception, since the very thought of the project being built?
Well, I think India has to, things are very volatile, as you mentioned, in South Asia. So India has to work far more when it comes to development of border security. I'm very sure a lot of good things are happening, but we need a national border policy. We need to secure our borders with Bangladesh with the same intensity, without any kind of leeway to the Bangladeshis, as we do with the Pakistani border. Internal security today is as important as external security, and therefore when it comes to border management, our budget for internal security has to go up manifold. You see a lot of good things are also happening. For example, you see there's a huge amount of seizure of narcotics which is happening. This is the narcotics, this is the money laundering that is actually connected with financing of terrorism, which emanates from Pakistan. So that's one part in which the government is, government agencies have been doing a considerable amount of work. Over a period of time, we have seen internal, the budget of Home Ministry has been increasing, but it has to be, a time might come where it has to be at par with the budget of the Defense Ministry of the Armed Forces. In China, budget for internal security is more than the budget for external security. That is one thing we have to remember. Last but not the least, we can't keep on having an open border with Nepal. It has been exploited to the hilt by Pakistan for sneaking in money and material for all kinds of nefarious activities in India. We must realize that as Pakistan starts imploding from inside, the deep state within Pakistan will be desperate to have some kind of conflict with India on the presumption that it will help them to consolidate the varying factions within Pakistan against India and help in galvanizing the country. So we have to be very cautious. You see, in spite of all the challenges that Pakistan is facing right now, the intensity of terror attacks in Jammu has not gone down, it has gone up, which means there is a plan they have in mind, and we have to be very careful. Last, India has to do a lot more for protection of its critical infrastructures. Critical infrastructures like railways are being targeted deliberately. There are clerics connected with terror groups in Pakistan giving sermons to his possible followers in India that they should target the trains and the railway tracks. If there is a video, it's open case now. So we have to be very careful on securing our economic growth. In the next few years, India's challenge is not economic growth, it will happen. But securing your economic growth, securing your economic asset is going to be a very big challenge. It is going to come from Bangladesh or Pakistan or elsewhere. That's right.
Okay, all right. I'm out of time. I thank all of you for joining me on the telecast and sharing your views.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.